Other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it. Now,
shameful. Shame on you, CNN, for not pushing back on that. Shame on you for allowing this anti-American, bitter, I mean, she is so bitter, vengeful, hateful. She does not have a loving bone in her body. Have you taken a look at Bill Clinton lately? You think Biden's a vegetable? Holy macadamia nut. This guy's had to live with her for over 50 years. You can see it all over his face. And even in a couple of his speeches where he just recently said, Carrie Lake is hot. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Why do you guys keep pulling out this formaldehyde creature into the forefront, into the fray? You think she's convincing anybody? Is she actually convincing your own base? Apparently Hillary and Kamala, completely disregarded this by this, I guess, the president of the United States. God, I mean, your guess is as good as mine when he said this after the first assassination attempt where Trump was shot in the face. This is what President Biden came out and said the very next day on July 14th, 2024.
My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors.
Yeah, that lasted all about a hot minute, and then they were right back at it. Even Karina Jean-Pierre the other day says, yes, he's a threat to democracy. Yes, he's Hitler. Yes, he's all these things. We can't ignore this. When you have no substance, when you have no legs to stand on, when you have no conviction, you have a zero track record, you have zero experience, you have obliterated every oath of office that you were supposed to uphold, and the only motive you have is power, this is what you resort to. I think most of us are sick and tired of this. Not only is it absolutely untrue and false, if you've ever been to a Trump rally, I've done millions of live streams. I've covered Trump for so long, I can't even count. I've interviewed so many people who've actually been physically around him at the rallies, at press conferences. It's a love fest. You hear the word love, inclusive, real inclusivity. You hear the word inviting, warm. Everybody there is non-judgmental, welcoming. They just have nothing. They have absolutely nothing. I'm sick and tired of it. And so is this amazing gentleman who actually lived through the Holocaust. Listen to this amazing testimony right here.
I'm 94 years old and survivor of Auschwitz and the death marches. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland when I was 9 years old. He murdered my parents and most of our family. I know more about Hitler than Kamala will ever know in 1,000 lifetimes. For her to accuse President Trump of being like Hitler is the worst thing I've ever heard in my 75 years living in the United States. I know President Trump, and he would never say this, and Kamala Harris knows this. She owes my parents and everybody else who was murdered by Hitler an apology for repeating this lie.
Why should the Jewish people support President Trump?
Because he's a mensch. I believe that President Trump is definitely going to be good for Israel, because in everything that he's done up to now was in favor. He never double-crossed anyone, and he never showed any weakness. Watching President Trump pray for the hostages at the Ohel and getting to spend time with him so meaningful. He has always stood with the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
Absolutely touching and moving from somebody who actually went through the horror of the Holocaust. Shame on you, Barack Obama. Shame on you, Hillary Clinton. Shame on you, Kamala Harris. Shame on you, Chuck Schumer, you weasel snake. You're Jewish, And I know you have power over Kamala and over a lot of these people. And you're just sitting back and allowing this to happen? Oh, and by the way, if he's so much of a Hitler, why were you joking around with him at the Alfred E. Smith dinner the other night and having fun and engaging with him? Do you normally do that with somebody who's as bad as Hitler? Kamala, I'm begging you. Why can't you just once talk about you? We are 10, 11 days away from the election, and nobody knows anything about you. You've faked and pandered God knows how many accents. You've said the same exact pre-rehearsed, premeditated talking points since day one. You've never once answered a serious question with an actual, substantive, concrete answer. Nobody still has any idea not only who you are, what you stand for. If you have any convictions of your own, you haven't differentiated yourself from the last 4 years from Biden at all. Biden has conclusively said that you were in on every single decision, every single policy. You even said you were the last to leave the room. Get from somebody who's worked in this industry, who's helped thousands of clients to achieve high roles, director, executive, etc. When you're interviewing for a job, the absolute worst thing you can do is try to explain to the company that the reason you should get the job is because the other guy's awful. And you're interviewing for the highest executive position in the land. And you expect us to hire you based on what you've said and done so far? I ask everyone watching sincerely, especially if you've been in a hiring position or you're a business owner or what have you ever hired somebody based on what I just said, the candidate actually downplaying and degrading other fellow applicants as opposed to actually conveying why they should be the ones hired and why they're a solution to your problems? I'd love to hear that. Here's a quick clip of actual voters and how is this language, this rhetoric, this very vile, repulsive, dangerous campaigning? I don't even know if you could call it that. Is it actually having an impact? Check this out. This is really, really good. And then I want to hear from you. Is it working on you?
Last few days, the vice president has started to talk about Donald Trump as a fascist, as someone who's spoken approvingly of Hitler. Raise your hand if you've heard about those comments. Okay. What do folks think? Is that something that's persuasive to you? Is that something that you'll factor into your vote? Linda?
To me, it's horrible that she's saying that about him. If he was saying that about her, everybody would be up in arms. I just don't think that's right.
What other folks think about what the vice president's saying, based on accounts of people who've worked with the President Trump? What do folks think about her making those charges and those characterizations?
She obviously thinks it's going to help her. I don't think it does at all. I don't know why, if it was Kelly who heard the president say that, I'm not saying he did or he didn't. I don't think he'd lie. I think you said that, Mark, on an episode. But I think that he had a responsibility to resign the day that was said, if that's true. I don't think that's the case.
I can't. I think part of the reason why I'm being pushed towards Trump so strongly is that I find that the Democrats and the left just keep going straight to Hitler all of the time with everything. Like it, and if it's not the left pushing Hitler, it's the right pushing Stalin. So it's like we're fighting World War II every single day for every single election. So it's so exhausting. I think it just detracts from, it pushes me away from their position.
But and it's actually true.
It's so hyperbolic that it makes it impossible to have good discussions, and I think it ruins the discourse.
Does anybody think it's valuable or something you want to hear from the vice president? Anybody? Raise your hand if you think this is something that's important for her to be talking about. Anybody? Okay.
I would also love to hear from you. What do you guys think? Is any of this language, how is it rubbing off on you? I would love to. I think I have a pretty good guess, but let me know in the comments. Speaking of John Kelly, here is Nick Ayers, former chief of staff to then Vice President Mike Pence, who says he was around these guys almost every single day. Listen to what he says about John Kelly saying Trump wanted Hitler generals or whatever.
Nick Ayers, pictured here with President Trump,
and Kelly during his service. You see him in between Mike Pence and General Kelly there in that picture on the left-hand side. He posted this to X yesterday, quote, "I have avoided commenting on intra-staff leaks or rumors or even lies as it relates to my time at the White House. But General Kelly's comments regarding President Trump are too egregious to ignore. I was with each of them more than most, and his commentary is patently false," he writes. And Nick Ayers joins me now. Nick, welcome. Good to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Martha.
We noticed this when it was posted yesterday. So tell me, why have you decided to speak out?
Well, I know the president personally, Martha. He is my friend. I know his heart. And this unequivocally did not happen. Full stop. John Kelly was never too shy to point out to senior staff when he differed with the president, often behind President Trump's back. So I can assure you, had those comments been made, the national media would have known, all of us would have known instantly. Moreover, he was, rarely ever alone with the president. Usually Governor Sanders, then White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, or the staff secretary or other national security officials, or myself, among many others, we were all together. So I'm saying with certainty, this did not happen. This is only being espoused because John Kelly's candidate is losing, and she's losing badly. They're desperate to change the subject from a wide open border, which has wreaked havoc in our major cities and on college campuses. It led tragically and awfully to the death of an innocent young female Georgian out in Athens, murdered by someone who walked freely across our southern border. They're desperate to change the subject from raging inflation, which is making groceries and clothes and the cost of energy unaffordable. It's crushing working Americans.
I understand.
So Martha, they need to change the subject. They can't talk about foreign policy. They've allowed a war to start in the Middle East, a war in Eastern Europe, a potential war in Asia.
Pretty convincing to me. He says unequivocally that did not happen. He was rarely around the president. This guy was, you saw the pictures. Again, he seemed to be an insider during the Trump administration for sure. And I love the way that he articulated that. I did find it a bit odd, Mr. Kelly, that you are kind of, I agree with Nick, bringing it out just a couple of weeks before the election. Why didn't you mention this 4 years ago? Why didn't you mention this in your book? Why haven't you mentioned this in countless interviews after you were fired on CNN and all your woke liberal allied networks? Why didn't you mention it then? Why didn't you mention all this Hitler BS then? Fishy doesn't quite cover it. I just want to end with this. It is desperation mode for the Hippocrats. It is desperation mode for the cackler in chief, the most undeserving, unqualified, absolute abomination. She is the biggest danger to our democracy known to mankind. I disagree with one of those voters in that panel saying that, there's hyperbole on both sides, calling her Stalin. No, I mean, if you look at her policies, if you look at what she believes in, if you look at the track record, and also the fact that she was voted even left of Bernie Sanders, the most radical liberal senator when she was senator, it's hard to deny that. It seems pretty true, and her policies reflect that as well. But it's absolute desperation, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. They want him to be, that's what they want. That's what all this language, all of this rhetoric, MSNBC is even 10 times worse. They are trying to foment the next assassination of our president, Donald Trump. And I'm telling you right now, if that happens, it is all over. We are definitely 1 billion% headed towards another civil war. I pray to God that doesn't happen. I want to hear your thoughts. I can't wait to read your comments. Let me know in the comments down below. Check out these videos coming up on the screen right here, especially the one that I did regarding this topic. Tap my face right there and subscribe. It's free, and the pinned comment is our free newsletter. It's free, so you never miss out on what's happening here. We got 400,000 subscribers, and we're growing, and we got a whole bunch of stuff planned. And as always, may God bless you, and may God bless America. I'll see you soon.